Welcome back to Gods of Agroecology. We have a fantastic episode with several astound guests joining us today. For those just tuning in who may not be familiar with agroecology, it is the application of ecological concepts and principles to the design and management of sustainable agroecosystems. We begin by asking three experts who have vast knowledge in their respective fields about what agroecology means to them.
Our first expert is Gabe Brown, a farmer and rancher from North Dakota who advocates for regenerative agriculture. Gabe is the author of Dirt to Soil, a novel based on Gabe's life and his journey integrating innovative regenerative agriculture practices into his farm to save it from weather-related crop disasters. Gabe has also been featured in numerous documentaries such as Kiss the Ground and Soil Carbon Cowboys.
The next audio clips are from a Zoom interview we conducted with Gabe Brown. Unfortunately, we could not explain to him how to record the screen, so there are no visuals.
So what does agroecology mean to you, and how do you incorporate it into your farming practices?
Yeah, so I like to think of it and use the definition that we're farming and ranching in nature's image to restore, rebuild, and revitalize ecosystems, beginning with all life in the soil, moving to all life above the soil. That way it's all encompassing. I firmly believe we need to look at our farms, our ranches, our communities as a whole, and we have to realize that every single thing we do has either positive compounding effects or negative cascading effects. And we have to be the ones who do what's right, not only for ourselves, but for the next generation.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow.
Our second expert is Jesse Lyons, the farm coordinator at the Brady Farm, a local farm located in South Syracuse. The Brady Farm implements levels of sustainability and biodiversity in order to grow organic food free of herbicides and pesticides. All of their food is sold at their market on site, providing a source of clean food to the surrounding residential community.
First, I wanted to ask, what does agroecology mean to you, and how do you incorporate it into your farming practices?
For us, agroecology is leaning on our natural systems, was kind of currently in place. Some of it we are introducing, but it's looking at the natural ecological dynamics and having a complex system as part of our management tool at the farm.
Our third expert is Laura Ann Minkoff-Zern, a professor in food studies at Syracuse University who has worked on various farms around the world.
So I don't have like a farming background at all. I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And also people thought I was weird because I was interested in farming. In my undergrad, I switched to developing a major in sustainable agriculture and development. And I took a semester abroad and went to Guatemala, and that's where I started working at a permaculture center and got certified in permaculture. So I started spending my summers working at small farms outside of Ithaca. I worked at a CSA, I worked at a farm stand, and then when I graduated, I was like, I'm going to go farm full time. I want to really commit to trying this. So I moved out to California, and I looked all over the country for farm, internships and experiences. And I worked on a farm called Full Belly Farm outside of the Bay Area. I found it was much harder than I thought. I had a really idealistic idea of what farming looked like and what the lifestyle would be, and what skills you needed, what knowledge you needed. I wasn't very good at fixing things. I wasn't very good at manual labor. And I found after, almost a year that I wasn't really very happy farming. I just found that it wasn't what I had idealized and what I expected. And what I found I was really interested in was all the farm workers that I was talking to every day, because I spoke Spanish and they were all coming from Mexico, and learning more about them and their experience and the fact that they were all farmers, right? They weren't just workers.
We also asked them each about the agroecological practices that were in place on the various farms they have worked on.
When I started down this path long time ago, mid-90s, there wasn't anybody around me doing this. And so I didn't have anywhere to go and to learn. So I had to go even broader than my local community. So I wanted to set an example of someone who's willing to share. So often in agriculture, farmers aren't willing to share. One of the real joys to me about regenerative agriculture is everybody's willing to share with you, and it truly is a community.
Another question, how do you manage soil health and fertility on your farm, and what are some techniques or practices that you use?
One of the most important things we do is, like you can see here, is like wood chip. So we work with other arborists, we're not arborists, and they dump wood chips here. So it's easier for them because they can get, instead of shipping it back to their site, they're able to bring them here. And then after 2 years, those wood chips decompose and we can use them directly as soil. So we're incorporating that as organic matter as a way of building soil here on site. We also are applying compost. We get it from okra, but we also make our own compost.
What kind of approaches do you take in terms of like crop diversification, or crop rotation, and how does that benefit the farm as a whole?
We have extensive crop rotation. So we have over 50 varieties of plants, and kind of probably from 8 key categories of types of plants. So, like the brassicas, the beans, the nightshades, stuff like that. And so we have spreadsheets and spreadsheets that go 4 years back. So we know where everything was. So we are rotating to avoid certain pests and pathogens, and also being mindful about fertility, because some plants are going to be more extractive of certain nutrients and heavier feeders than others. Others are actually going to contribute things like nitrogen back into the soil. So we're trying to match what was existing in the previous location. So we do a lot. We spend a lot of our crop plan is about rotation and diversification.
Finally, we consulted with our experts to inquire about the actions that aspiring farmers interested in advancing regenerative agriculture practices can take, as well as the ways non-farmers can contribute towards this cause.
So, what advice would you give to someone who is interested in starting their own farm that's regenerative, and what resources or support are available to them?
Yeah, so good question. The advice I give them is you need to educate yourself. You need to become a lifelong learner. I have several college degrees in agriculture, but never did they talk to me about how an aggregate is formed. Yet that's the most critical thing to being a farmer. They didn't talk to me about the 6 principles, the 3 rules of adaptive stewardship, and how they drive the 4 ecosystem processes. If you understand that, you can be a success in production agriculture.
What do you think are some of the most effective ways to promote sustainable agriculture? Encourage farmers to employ these practices.
I think education is really important. There are a lot of incentives on a federal level to support farms doing things that are more sustainable, and that's mostly around soil conservation, water conservation. But again, there's not economic incentives for farms to do these things. So they might want to do something better, but the cost of farming is going up and up, and as other farms are getting larger and larger, it's making it more difficult for smaller scale farms. It's easier to employ these types of sustainable methods, but it is costly. And so as those smaller farms start going away, it becomes more expensive for them to do these things. So there needs to be economic incentive to support farms doing this. And so that's either coming from the cost of the food and having support to subsidize the cost of the food coming off these farms, or helping to fund farmers use these management techniques in a different way. But for both, consumers too don't see why one product should cost more. They're like, oh, organic's always so expensive, but there's a reason why it's more expensive. And so I think it's important for consumer education to also understand the role of farms and their impact in the immediate environment, and also the opportunity that farmers have to be conservationists and improve our native environment. And so consumer education is also a big piece of this.
And what do you think the biggest thing that we as individuals can do to help support a transition to more sustainable agriculture?
I think it's really about policy. I think it's fantastic if we can all be good consumers, but not everyone can afford to do that, because more sustainable food costs more money and is not accessible to everyone. So I think it has to be about both, getting involved with food policy councils at a local scale, making sure that you have food hubs where small scale farmers can actually process their products, right? Or go in together on, things that they need, like trucks and seed purchases. So, small and regional kind of stuff to bigger state level policy that supports farmers, to national policy, looking at like where our agricultural dollars are spent, what subsidies are going to what, the priorities of the USDA, like making sure that people are paying attention. The Farm Bill is coming up, right? So every time we vote, we're voting for food policy, whether we know it or not, because all of our representatives vote on agricultural issues. But international policy too. So like there's so many different ways to get involved, but I think the more you pay attention to all the different scales of power and policy and figure out where to make, what issues you care about. Like there's so many to care about in the food system. But I think going beyond that, consumer activism is super important. And then we need farmers, right? Like we need people to do the work.
Yeah.
But for most people, that's not going to be their path. So I think thinking about like being an educated person in terms of politics and policy.
When we first sought out to explore the ins and outs of agroecology, we did not expect it to be such a powerful tool for restoring our planet's health and promoting sustainable food systems. But after speaking with experts like Gabe Brown, Jesse, and Laura Ann, it's clear that agroecology is not just a buzzword, but a necessary and effective approach to agriculture. We hope this episode has shed some light on the importance of agroecology, inspires you to take more action towards a sustainable future. We'd like to leave you with some closing remarks from Gabe Brown.
So no matter what your interest is, I tell people regenerative ag can be part of the solution. Agriculture was part and is part of the problem, but it can be a greater part of the solution.